Hey guys, Silven here. I'm going to be doing a slightly different guide today. This guide is for casters, and it's to help them with identifying what a guardian will be running, and their optionals, and what basically what they want to do with the build that they're using. Okay, so first off, I'm going to start with build identification. Now, for any of you who don't know, there's three main Guardian types of builds. Three main types of Guardian builds is a better way to say that. There's the Bunker, there's the DPS, and the Burst. So the Bunker Guardian is the most common one in TPVP right now. And basically, the other thing about this is that Guardians do not have to be just the one type of spec. They can spec into many different things while still retaining a strong aspect of the original spec that they're going for. So for example, the Bunker Guardian will spec one of two ways. They'll spec as Bunker Support Control or just Bunker Support. They never just stay straight Bunker. You can't do that as a Guardian. You have to spec with multiple different aspects in mind. The DPS will spec as a DPS / burst / support, and sometimes they'll take some of the support away for more burst and DPS. And the burst will run burst / DPS, so they can burst and DPS, which most burst classes can. And the way there's actually a really significant interaction between these three types of builds. There's the DPS will actually counter the Bunker. The Bunker will counter the Burst, and the Burst will counter the DPS. Those three builds, if they ever get into a 1v1, they actually are in a triangle of, a counter triangle, I guess. They each counter each other. They're in a circle, I guess. So those are the three types of builds you'll encounter, and I'll tell you how to identify them. So identifying the build, this is what I'm going to go through mostly today. The amulets, so the easiest way to pick up what a Guardian is running is just to see what amulet they have. Some of them share amulets, and people have different variations of amulets, and I'm about to go through them, but that's the easiest way to pick up. And then there's the traits. So again, what I'm trying to do with this guide is trying to explain what they are trying to achieve, so that you can explain to the audience of what they're trying to do, and that's what the traits can help you. It gives away a lot. And the optional skill slot, I'll go through that later. Guardians have 1 to 2 optional skills, but I'll go through that much later. There's a slide for that, don't worry. And the weapons, and the weapons on Guardian are very unique, and I'll get to why in a sec. Okay, so the amulets. So for the Bunker, you have 3 main kinds. Of course, they can go another kind of amulet. Generally, it won't be optimal, and generally, it's very rare to see that. So the 3 types of amulets for the Bunker would be the Cleric Knight, Cleric Cleric, and Cleric Soldier. So what happens is, for Cleric Knight, the idea is because the Cleric reduces your health enough that sometimes you can be bursted down just because you don't have that 17k health that you generally need around that amount to prevent a burst. The Knight boosts it up, and it also gives you the precision you need to hit Vigorous Precision a lot. Now, Vigorous Precision is very, very important on Bunker Guardians, and all Guardians, because it gives you the vigor to continue dodge rolling and surviving, and that's how you heal yourself on the new age Bunker builds. So those are it's really important, especially for control builds who rely on getting those crits a lot. And all of them rely on getting the crits, but not some of them would like to sacrifice for the Cleric, which is where the Cleric comes in. So they're more focused on just supporting. So they're often going to run Staff, almost always actually going to run Staff, because that Cleric will add on to Empower and the Orb of Light. And the Cleric Soldier is when they're just feeling that they need an extra bit of toughness, and that gives the vitality back as well. That's the one that's least run. It's usually just Cleric Knight or Cleric Cleric. Now the DPS builds, Berserker is the most common. Obviously, it puts out the most damage out of any of the other amulets. But obviously, there's the drawback that sometimes you'll want to run healing power, which is where the Valkyrie comes in. I think it was on K-Pod's build originally, where he just stacked a ton of healing power, and then all the micro heals would get scaled up enough. Not just altruistic healing, but the symbol heals, the heals on the armor, all those, they would all get scaled up, and eventually they would add into like a much larger, heals. It's actually really strong sustain. And then the Berserker Soldier is a more recent one, where people have started running some slight amounts of extra armor because they realize that they don't always need that healing power. And the Soldier's Berserker is sort of like a safe option, sort of, but at the same time it's also not safe. It's safer against certain builds like burst and things like that, but then when you verse conditions, you don't actually have enough damage, or any sustain, you don't actually have enough damage to pressure them into not being able to pressure you, basically. And the last is burst, which there is literally only one option, that's the Zerker. You have to get as much damage out of it as possible. Even running Zerker's Soldier isn't that viable, it's usually just Zerker. Okay. So then we have, I was going to show you some screenshots of just like general, so you can just look at it and straight away you know what build it is. So by looking at these, the first one is the most common build, the 10-30-30. These are bunker traits, obviously. You can instantly identify that as a bunker. There's no doubt about it. And with the second one, again, instantly you know it's a bunker, the 20-30-20. Less common, but still it doesn't mean it's bad at all. And then you can have a look. Generally there are two to three big changes on the bunker traits. So I hope you can see my mouse. This 3 in virtues, that's for consecrated ground. Now that is quite often changed. When someone changes their optional skill, they will change, 90% of the time this virtue will change. Because if you're running, like Wall of Reflection or something like that, you don't need to place the wall. It can be where you stand, so it changes to Master of Consecrations. If you're doing the spirit weapons, then it changes to the spirit weapon one. So you got to look out for that one. That's the big one. These two will almost always remain unchanged. Pure of Voice will remain unchanged. Shouts will remain unchanged. This will remain unchanged. But it's this one here. This one knocks back when you start to res. The 5 one. I can't remember the name of it. But it's quite often changed to two-handed mastery or things like that. When you have two-handed mastery on a hammer, you start being able to knock back quite a significant amount more than normal. So that can actually be quite game-changing, picking up on that trait when you're introducing it. And then these 10 points here in virtues can be shifted around. So like in the example here, they've put them in Valor, which would put more strength in the shield, but less stability. And then sometimes they can go into Radiance for more crit chance, for the dodge roll, heals, and vigor. Okay, the next one, the DPS traits. So again, 30 in Valor, 30 in Honor, instantly recognizable. The changes here, they always have 3 and 10 because they're required. Larger symbols and heals, the symbols heal. You'll always have altruistic healing, and then you'll have one optional. It'll either be symbols last longer, empowering might. The empowering might one can be a game changer, and pure voice can also be a game changer. So those ones are good ones to pick up on. And obviously they can run, Radiance and Virtues. Sometimes they can run Consecrated Ground in here instead of the Vengeful one. And bring Sanctuary, so that one would be a nice one to identify as well. And then the burst ones, again, all of these are really easily identified. So again, Radiance 30, Valor 30, and then the most common at the moment, like 99% of Guardians will always put 5 in Honor and 5 in Virtues, no matter what build they're running at all. No matter what build they're running, they will always put those 5 points in. But sometimes they want that extra damage, and then you can identify that by they have the 10 points in Zeal. They can also change some of the traits around, whether they're running Mace or Sword. I didn't show that, but that's definitely something they can do. Okay, now the optional skill slot. The Guardians have 1 to 2 optional skills. Generally, it's just 1. And it will change depending on what you're playing against, depending on what map, depending on what your team is running, and things like that. And it can be game changing. So for the bunker, I've shown the skill bar here. So these are just utilities. The thing about Guardian is the heal and the elite are almost impossible to get rid of. You almost always run shelter and almost always run renewed focus. Sometimes though, Tome of Courage's run, and that's a really good one to pick up on because things like Foe Fire, healing the Lord with the Tome heal, and then sometimes you have like these big plays where you heal the whole team and you end up winning. Things like that. So here you can fit stuff like Shield of the Avenger, Sanctuary obviously is the most commonly picked one, Save Yourselves, things like that. They can just be chucked in. The DPS one, you can have Judge's Intervention is the most common. Then you have, some people run Retreat. I don't really like that, but some people do run that, and it is very strong. And the Save Yourselves and Hold the Line. Lots and lots of different options. So each one usually has one option. Sometimes Smite Condition is changed out on DPS, so that's when I was saying the 2 options. And Burst generally runs triple meditation because of their heals and their low health pool, but they can also run Stand Your Ground, and I've seen some spirit weapons being pretty effective, like obviously the hammer. The weapons, the big thing about the Guardian compared to other classes is all weapons can be used both defensively and offensively on every single build that they are. So if you have a defensive build, they can use. If you have a bunker, they can be used offensively and defensively. If you have a burst, they can be used offensively and defensively. I'm pretty sure no other class has that option. Excuse me. So every single build can use every single weapon. You can run a DPS build with Mace, Shield, Staff on a simple DPS. That's actually really good. It's really strong. Excuse me again. And one of the big things I've seen a lot in casting is Staff, Hammer, and Focus. When the Ellie puts up the static field, they will often be used... the Hammer and the Focus will be used as blast finishes, and the Staff will be used if no one else has Swiftness. These are important to pick up because those aren't always the weapons people are running in the game. For example, on Kylo, I'll be running Hammer, Sword, Shield, but I'll start off with Hammer, Sword, Focus. I'll use my Focus for the blast finisher, and then switch it out for the shield. So just be mindful of that when casting and when introducing people's builds, because sometimes they obviously don't run it because they need the blast finishers. And the biggest thing is most weapons actually don't have that much of an impact on the build's function. They have an added effect onto the build. So for example, I actually went through this a bit when I said they can be used on every single build. So if you have a bunker build and you're using a sword, it's not going to stop them from supporting their allies, obviously. It's just going to add on to that. It means they can teleport away and things like that. And I think I might just do a quick rundown of the weapons, just in case people don't know. So I'll start off with the one-handed main hand weapons. So the sword. Sword can be used offensively, defensively, has the blocks on Zealot's defense, also does damage with Zealot's defense. Doesn't matter which class you play, which spec you play. If you're a bunker, you're still going to hit 1.7, sometimes 2.2 on Zealot's defense against another bunker. That's really strong. If they don't dodge it, you can waste their dodges so they have less for your allies. The Flashing Blade can get you back onto points if you get knocked off, especially on Kylo. You pretty much can't run without it. And it can teleport you out of things like Mesmer Burst. Like if they get the Immobilize on you and you miss the dodge, you just teleport out. You're safe. And obviously it's a really, really strong DPS weapon. It's used in a lot of burst builds. Mace, again, the auto attack is crazy on a DPS build. But when you put it into a bunker build, you get all your heals and stuff. And Prod Strike is just massive, massive damage. It's crazy good. Hits 6, 7k, crazy. And it gives that block. The Scepter is the best support weapon on the Guardian. A half second, it feels less than half second, but that's what this skill tip says. Half second snare, and it adds vulnerability. You can set up your own spikes with it. You can set up allied spikes with it. That's usually what you do in a bunker. And it also has this massively really good auto attack. Like the scepter hits 1.7k on a burst build per auto attack. So I'll go through the two-handed weapons. The staff auto attacks 1k AoE plus when you put it on a DPS build. Can get up to 1.7 if you get enough might stacks, which you can because you have a staff, you have Empower. Empower, obviously, amazing support for your team if you're playing a bunker. But again, when you put it on an offensive spec, has massive support. Like, you get the might stacks yourself, so you have the damage yourself. And the hammer, obviously, control is good for defense and offense. I feel this is kind of redundant. I think we've got an idea of that every weapon can be used aggressively and defensively, no matter what you play. Okay, the skill indicators. This is kind of frustrating, but I understand how much stress everybody's on, and as great as the casters are, occasionally they do miss things, and hopefully this can help. So just sometimes if they see that skill indicator, they know something's going to happen and they can stay on that camera. Because there was a few times where I'd see someone put up Shield of Wrath and they'd switch camera, and I'm like, oh no, they're going to do something cool. But yeah, so I'll just go through them. Banish is a big one. It's the blue glow on the hammer. It's obviously often covered by fire, and if it's an Azura, you often can't actually see it, because it's covered by other animations, unfortunately. But you can definitely see when the person is, you know, flopped off the point by Banish. It's really cool. And it's really game-changing as well, and it can force stomps and reses, and it interrupts, you know, like Empower, Churning Earth, things like that. And the big thing is, if someone dodges it, it has a long recharge, and it's a really important play that I feel that a lot of people should know about. So if you see Banish go down and someone dodges, it's like sick, and people should know. Ring of Warding. I don't think this is the biggest, most important one, but I definitely think it's worthy of mention. So at the very start of the game, when the two bunkers converge on the same point, assuming that they're both playing bunkers midpoint, if one bunker gets there first and puts up Ring of Warding, it forces the stability on the other bunker. And I think that's really, really cool how it forces cooldowns before the game has pretty much even started. And when you put it up around enemies, it forces them into AoE. So like, you know, saying like, oh, he's put up the Ring of Warding and now they just dump AoE in the ring and they just own them. Like, I really want to see that. That'd be sick. And there's this one aspect where if you're standing the right distance away, if you put it up, it will interrupt someone who is on the edge of it. So, you know, it can be an interrupt, and I can't consistently do it myself, but I'm sure someone will come along and be amazingly good at interrupting with a Ring of Warding, and we'll all think he's sick. Or she is sick. Oh my god. Shield of Absorption, instant knockback. You know, it's a really cool rupt. So when someone's healing and then they get interrupted by Shield of Absorption, I never see anyone comment on it, but that's one of the things that I wish some people would comment on. And I'm sure like this may be in the back of their mind or something like that, but you know, it's really cool, and that's one of the skills that I think is really important. And of course the projectile absorption. You know, like if someone's rezzing your ally and you think this NG is gonna throw a whole lot of nades on him, and you put up Shield of Absorption and just be like, no, denied, and then you heal all your allies as well. It's really nice. Sanctuary is obviously game breaking. I realize that everyone does comment on this, but I put it in obviously because it's so important. The quarter-second cast is just amazing. Like, you can get it at the last second of the stomp, clutch reses, and it's just game-changing. You know, you can't get the knock because you missed the banish or something. You put up Sanctuary, and then the point is suddenly contested again and not in their possession. And the game completely changes from them winning to you now having a chance. So I think it's a really important skill to look at. But everyone already does, so that's the best thing. Chains of Light. It's just the best Guardian skill, I think. It does the most damage. It does the most damage. not through direct damage, but by snaring so your allies can do the most damage. So for example, a thief heart-seekering an enemy, they dodge, it ends up, instead of being 20k, it does 2k. With Chains of Light, it does 20k. So effectively, you did 18k. I mean, that's just like a complete random example. But I set up so many spikes with this. I consistently, with Ellie's, you get one-shots because of Chains of Light. Purely because of Chains of Light. And yeah, it does take a lot of skill to use effectively. I've seen people just randomly use it and it works. But to effectively use consistently, it does take a lot of skill to use. And Empower is obviously, it's a big heal and a massive, might stack buff. And I think that's just, because it's usually put up at the start of the battle, and it can change the tide of a battle, and I never see anyone comment on it, even though you can see clearly that it's this massive damage output that they can now consistently do, that can win them team fights and effectively the game sometimes. Okay, so the skill indicators for the DPS and burst build, they're sort of bunched together because there aren't that many of them. Obviously, because you're trying to burst the enemy. You're not, like something like Whirling Wrath. They're already using it when you see it. It's not an indicator of what's going to happen. So Shield of Wrath. Whenever this pops up on a DPS guard, they're going to burst someone unless they're like in combat. I mean, if they're out of combat, or they're trying to set it up, they're trying to burst someone down. And it's one of the Guardian's strongest attacks, along with Zealot's Fire, Prot Strike, things like that. And it's telegraphed, and you can explain it before it goes off. You have all this time. It has 4 seconds, of time that you get to explain it. So you can say, this Guardian's about to, own the crap out of this guy because he's just put up this burst skill, and we now know what's going to happen. The next one's Zealot's Fire. Again, this means that there is going to be a burst imminent when you see the blue flames, unless they miss. It's very, very strong, and quite often it's used with the Judge's Intervention to instantly hit with a smite condition and stuff like that. So it's very telegraphed, very easy to explain, and it's really cool. These are my links. I hope you enjoyed my quick guide. It wasn't a really long one. I might do another video explaining things more in detail. I didn't have any notes, so I know I skipped a whole lot of stuff that I really wanted to talk about. But I hope this helped a lot, and leave feedback and stuff in comments and whatever you need to do.